Like, I can't wait. Let's move back into open session with recognitions. Dr. Freitas?
Recognitions?
We need to do another
We do not. We were in closed, just for the audience, we were in closed session downstairs. We reconvened back to open session, and here we are. Here we are.
Good evening, honorable board members and visitors today. The first student we would like to acknowledge is Luke Smithing. Luke was a sectional champion in the 300 intermediate hurdles, running a personal best time of 41.48 seconds. This time broke RB's previous sophomore record by exactly 2 seconds, which was set by Rob Koss in 1995. Wow. Luke also took third place in the 110 high hurdles, just missing qualifying with a PR of 16:34. So we'd like to congratulate State. All right, hold on. We got a couple picture moments right here. I'm ready. Okay.
act like you like.
Awesome. Nice job.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you, Luke.
The next student I would like to recognize is Bryce Pekuric, state qualifier for the 800-meter run. Bryce is hardworking. These are the words of Coach Jensen. Bryce is hardworking, caring, considerate, smart, relentless. Bryce represents the best of student athletes at RB, and we have been lucky to have her on our track and field team. She is always a competitive individual, but her real contribution to the team is the motivation she brings to other team members. Teammates see her constantly pushing herself to her limits, and this inspires them to push themselves further. She has never surprised the coaches with her compliment. She has been an all-conference athlete in track and field. This year she qualified for the state meet, and she finished 19th in the 3A 800-meter run. Let's give it up for Bryce Pekuric.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And then, last but not least, I would like to congratulate Owen Murphy. He's the Gatorade Illinois Baseball Player of the Year. He led our baseball team to over 30 victories, regional title, first time in Class 4A history that we win the regional title. We won the conference title. He's actually in San Diego right now getting ready for the draft, where you get to show off your skills in front of scouts and professional teams. And wish Owen Murphy the best, and congratulations to the Bulldogs baseball team, everybody involved, for an outstanding season. And then our All-State athlete and Gator Player of the Year, Owen Murphy.
Okay.
And that concludes recognitions.
Thank you, Dr. Freitas. Do we have any visitor statements this evening?
Luke, this is the time to run. Your dad knows.
Your dad knows.
I threw a couple of these before, Bob. I know how they go.
Let's get the double set here, sorry. Seeing none, no visitor statements, going to move on to discussion items, information items, FOIA requests.
FOIA requests, we had 3 FOIA requests that are in your packet. Calvin Lensberry, information provided in regarding to administrative contracts and school district benefits. This went out to most schools in Illinois. Ms. Janulis, in regards to some of the fine arts and music data. And then Sherry Reed from Smart Procure also had some information related to, we get this about every 6 months, purchase orders and dates, etc. And all the responses are included in the board packet.
Were there any questions on those, Dr. Skinkis? I don't think so. Moving forward to additional discussion items. Does anyone have something to add for our discussion purposes? Looking right, looking left. Moving on to reports. I don't have a report this evening. Superintendent report, please.
Yes, give me 1 second.
Thank you.
That's still a FOIA. I'm trying to get through all the FOIAs here. So let's try that.
There was a lot of FOIA.
Followed Marianne, 147.
147.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 2022 school year ended the week of May 23rd with another successful commencement ceremony occurring on Friday, May 27th. We were back indoors following our normal practices, and it was really well received, and I think the students were very well behaved. Everybody in the audience was great. The air conditioning worked. We didn't have to deal with weather, so it was a good school year. Best wishes to the class of 22, and thank you to all the employees and families who helped us return for a successful school year. The Board of Education and RBA, if you haven't seen in the local newspaper, have completed negotiations with a new 3-year agreement that will take place from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th of 2025. Thank you everyone, both on the board and RBA side, who participated in the negotiation process. Dr. Smetana has developed a tentative budget for the board. She will provide regular updates to the Board of Education throughout the next few months before the budget adoption occurs in September. We do need the board to approve a tentative budget tonight, so Dr. Smetana will include that later on in the agenda so that we can start processing payments and bills throughout July as we get ready for next school year. The district is operating on summer hours now, which is 7:30 to 3:30, so anybody watching, if you need to conduct any business with the district, please come through the hours of 7:30 and 3:30. In regards to the advisory councils, facility advisory met on Monday, June 13th. Additional information will be shared during Dr. Smetana's facility report in regards to some updates. Finance Advisory Council met on the 13th to review the tentative budget. Personnel Advisory Council general communications were shared regarding annual renewal of administrative contracts. And the Policy Advisory Council met on Thursday, June 2nd, regarding some recommended changes to the most recent Press Plus issue that will be discussed later in the agenda. And that is it for the superintendent report.
Thank you. Moving on to Dr. Smetana.
Good evening. Tonight I'll provide the Board of Education with information through the month of May, which represents 92% of our fiscal year. On Board Book page 150, you'll see the monthly summary report, which outlines the total operating revenue for the month was $1,007,772, with 34% coming from property tax and CPPRT, 27% coming from federal and state reimbursement, and 21% coming from evidence-based funding, which is our state funding. The total operating expenditures for the month were $2,139,170, with 74% towards salary and benefits, 11% for purchase services, 5% for operations and maintenance, and 4% for special education tuition. Next is our monthly financial statements. On Board Book page 152, you'll see the summary of revenue. It shows that the district has received 102.5% of our budgeted revenue for the year. This amount is lower than this time last year, which was 106.5. The primary reason we received more revenue than what we budgeted for is we received more than double of CPPRT. And every August, the state releases an estimate of what you can expect, and we budget approximately that amount. So no one foresaw that we would get over $1 million in CPPRT. As well as we received some additional reimbursement for special education tuition. On the expenditure side, we have spent 86.5% of our budgeted expenditures for the year, and this amount is pretty similar to this time last fiscal year. As always, I have included the statement of revenue and expenditures for our board accounts for the month of May, and there was a question submitted in regards to one of the accounts. The question submitted was in regards to Board Book page 169 about Amendment 22. Amendment 22 is our life safety fund, so 90, that whole entire count is our life safety fund. Amendment 22 is our latest life safety amendment. So every 10 years we do a life safety study, a 10-year study, and then when we want the state to approve the projects that we need to complete under life safety, so that we can then issue life safety bonds, we have to get approval from the state, and every time you submit something for approval, they call it an amendment. So we're at Amendment 22, so that's where that line item comes from. The money that we spent this year in that line item is for the pavers outside by door A and going down the side of the building. They needed to be reset, as well as our guardrail and handrail project, which was completed late last summer, right before the start of this school year, which was to bring the guardrails and the handrails up to ADA standards. Also provided the student activity account for the month of May. When you look at those, keep in mind negative account balances actually represent positive fund balances for those accounts. And then I have a few informational items tonight as well. On an annual basis, I share with the board the Wellness Committee report, which begins on Board Book page 175. The Wellness Committee is formed to meet the requirements set forth by the Public Act, which also aligns to our Board Policy 6:50. So every year we provide the board with this report. I'm not going to go over the report in detail, but I did want to highlight there were some questions submitted about the EBC, which is our insurance cooperative, and their tiered incentives for our wellness. So this year we did have 105 faculty and staff participate in the wellness screening. In order to qualify for Tier 1, you have to have 50% of your eligible staff that are taking insurance participate. And so we had 105, which is well more than 50%. And so we completed the Tier 1 incentive, which is earning 0.25% of our insurance premium for the district. This year that amount was $6,571, and we receive a check from them after they process that we then deposit into the same account that we pay for our insurance. So it's like a credit to our insurance premiums. Once you meet Tier 1, you're able to meet Tier 2, are eligible to have that opportunity, and then Tier 3. Tier 2 focuses on wellness programs, so you have to have a wellness committee that meets 3 times a year. You have to have a mission and a vision. I have to send out a senior leadership memo. We have to give a wellness survey, and then we have to have an action-based plan. We just found out this week that we successfully met all those requirements, so they will be issuing us a check within the next month for another 0.25% of our insurance premium. Tier 3 focuses on improving scores in the wellness screening that I talked about for Tier 1 as a whole, or we have to maintain staying in the healthy range. And so they don't look at that until after we meet Tier 2, so I imagine that happens within the next month or so. As you can see, there are other things that are outlined and initiatives that are happening in both Quest. We had our food service director provide a tasting to our students and get their feedback. Which is something we do on an annual basis. And the students really appreciated it, I think especially coming back from COVID. I didn't know as much about the cafeteria, and so I think that was really helpful, and they were able to provide a lot of feedback as well. And then the wellness department, in conjunction with the wellness committee, because a lot of the teachers in the wellness department participate on the committee, planned a National Physical Education Month and had a lot of fun activities for the staff and students as well. So I want to thank James Baum as the instructional coach for wellness, oversees the wellness committee in conjunction with me, and so I just want to thank him if he's watching for his hard work on that. And then the next item that I have for the board is the Facility Advisory Council did meet on Monday to discuss the life safety update that we provided, as well as the quarterly business review from Aramark. We provided the quarterly business review on Monday after we met in board packet, so I apologize it was not there in advance. So you can take a look at that when you have a moment. One of the things that the advisory council discussed was having Aramark come in maybe August or September. One of the things that we purchased through them was the UVQ system, which is a UV light that helps with air quality. And so we want to have someone come from Aramark to talk about that in more detail, as well as recognize some of the staff. So look forward to that, and certainly now that you have the quarterly business review, please, if you have any questions on that, let me know. And then we also discussed life safety items. So under that Amendment 22 that I talked about earlier, there were roughly about 80 or 83 items that were outlined in there that were things that we needed to complete over a period of 10 years. We have completed all of those items to date, and we still have 1 year left in our 10-year cycle. One of the things that we discussed, which you'll see at the next board meeting, I don't have anything to provide you right now, is we'll be bringing a recommendation to the board for one additional amendment to replace the air handlers for the cafeteria and the library. The process is the board has to approve it, and then it goes to the state, and then the state has to approve it. So there's a pretty lengthy process to that, but one of the reasons we rescheduled our earlier meeting from 2:55 to the Alumni Lounge is because the air handler wasn't working as efficiently as it should have. So there's a real need for that, and those were not replaced during the renovation. The last thing that I have in my report is just a follow-up. I've talked about this probably twice before. The TRS is required to have a supplemental savings plan. The last time I provided an update was in December. Initially, TRS was trying to get all of the districts to immediately have their board vote for this. And what it is, it's a defined contribution plan, and TRS is mandating that schools adopt it so that members can enroll in their TRS's 457 plan and begin contributing. Initially, they had lots of other deadlines and rollouts, timelines, and those have all been pushed back because there is a strong push from our legal counsel and other legal counsels in the state that are trying to get some of the language changed because it puts a lot of liability and requirements on the district when it should fall to TRS. So legal counsel still recommends holding off, but I did want to provide the board an update because TRS has given a hard deadline of September 30th of 2022 for all school districts to adopt. So you will see this coming up in the future. And they do plan to have auto enrollment for new TRS members in January of 2023. So,
Dr. Smetana, are there any penalties for not enrolling?
I don't believe so, but I would never bring a recommendation to approve unless our legal counsel tells us at the time
Okay,
that
that's fair.
that it is required and that we should bring it to the board for approval.
Like Dr. Smetana, under what authority do they have to mandate that? Is this coming from the Illinois State Board?
It is a statute that they, I believe, have been, from what I have read, that they have been out of compliance with for some time. And so the auto enrollment would be for new TRS members unless they opt out. So, certainly we would be providing that education for new employees so that they could make an informed decision. Part of this is a lot of schools don't necessarily offer a 457B option for their employees to invest, and we offer several. So I don't foresee this as necessarily being an option that many of our employees are interested in. But nevertheless, TRS is saying it's a requirement, so I will continue to work with legal counsel and bring something forward.
So if I could, it was a General Assembly bill.
From the state?
Yes, it comes from the state, and it applied to a number of public entities because they wanted to get to this auto enrollment perspective, especially in light of Tier 2, was to force people to focus on their retirement savings. So that, I think, was where it came from, but to Dr. Smetana's point, I think it's been sitting out there for a number of years, and they haven't taken action.
We already offered these, or similar, or plans for 457s and 403Bs, yeah?
Correct. The
Those are
challenge, one of the
voluntary.
challenges is we offer it and we use TSA, which is merged with Omni. And so we're able to monitor contribution limits because
Sure.
they all go through that entity. TRS's plan would go through FOIA, which is a separate entity, and the way the resolutions and language is currently that it would fall to the sole responsibility of the district to make sure that employees do not go over any limitation contributions,
Sure.
which is very difficult, not necessarily for a school district of our size where we may not have an employee take advantage of it, but for a large school district, to have to manage that when it doesn't talk to another system is very cumbersome.
Right.
So that's just one of the concerns.
I was just making the point that there are for employees here at RB already, there are options. So it's not as if they don't have them. They have them already.
Yes, they have several options. That concludes my report, unless there are any other questions for tonight.
Does not appear to be any additional questions. Dr. Freitas.
Good evening, honorable board members. I'll quickly present, then introduce my team. So from the principal's report, teaching and learning session 1 for summer school is currently underway. We have approximately 100 students involved in either credit recovery, U.S. history, health. They're taking advantage of our summer offering. Session 2 begins July 6th and runs through July 28th. Again, a big congratulations to the class of 2022. I was excited to celebrate them as you all as well, and I really want to thank all the staff members for making the school year happen and for working together for our students. Residency dates are coming up next month. All the information could be found on our website, but July 13th is the first day from 8 to 3, July 20th, 11 to 7, July 27th, 11 to 7, and August 2nd, 8 to 2. This is really important. Per previous communication, our residency forms must be submitted online by July 9th. Then parents will be issued an appointment to come in person. Freshman orientation will be held at the Canelli Athletic Complex, locally known as the Stadium, on August 10th from 11 to 12:30. Activities and athletic updates. Summer camps are on the way. There's hundreds of students here, and I also want to thank all the coaches for taking their time to help our student athletes grow and improve. Again, big shout out to our boys baseball team for a record-breaking season, winning 30 games, reaching regional title. Big shout out to Owen. We know you're going to be a pro. Big shout out to our girls softball team for winning a regional title, and congratulations again to our state qualifiers Bryce Pekurick and Luke Smithing. That concludes our principal report. With that said, I would like to introduce Dave Mannon, Assistant Principal for Student Affairs, who will report the second semester school culture and activity data. Mr. Mannon? And Dean Weinberg will be assisting Mr. Mannon on one of our findings.
Our Dean of Students, I don't know if the Board of Education has a chance to meet Ms. Weiberg, but Ms. Weiberg, last year she was with COVID, so I don't know if she had a chance to come.
Well, good evening. We're going to present the Culture and Climate Report for second semester in regards to average daily attendance, tardies, suspension, behaviors, and practices and initiatives going forward. Our average daily attendance for second semester ended up a lot of 93s, as you can see on the report, but we ended up at 93.1% this year, which is down from where we were at last year. Last year was kind of a mixed bag in regards to online attendance and in-person attendance, things like that. And as you can see at 2020 and 2019, 93% is kind of where we've been hanging out at. And so, coming back with also mental health days included, that impacted us greatly as well. I think overall 93% is a fair mark for where we ended up at. Per month there, like I said, a lot of 93s, 93.3, January, and then you see in May, similar 93.1. So we stayed around 93% for the entire semester. We'll talk about initiatives, how we're going to attack and increase that percentage going forward here at the end of this report. Average tardies per period per day, about 80 to 85% of these come first hour. And a lot of that is contributed to the construction, the railroad crossings, a whole bunch of stuff this year. And so that number is up at 14.6. So if you were hanging out by our main entrance in the morning, you probably see around 10 to 14 students per day late to class first hour. Students that are late to class throughout the school day is pretty minimal. To be honest with you, our security staff does a nice job, so do our teachers in starting their lessons right away and removing any students that are lingering in the hallways with kind of their in-class procedures. But that's kind of where we're at, and again, we'll talk about some further interventions here going forward. If you look at the entire look and view of ADA throughout the year, semester 1, 93.5, semester 2, 93.1, at the end of the year at 93.3%. From my previous report from first semester, we included per race suspension percentages, and we're going to get into our behavior and suspension report here, but to start that, if you look at what I like to do is just kind of give you an overview, and we had a discussion last time about how that looks, and so I broke it down into those two different categories. And the first category is just suspended students only, so the percentage of race by only those percent of students that were suspended overall. And so if you look at a total of 33 students that were suspended for second semester, you have a total of 13 Hispanic students, 9 white students, 7 black students, and then 4 mixed race. If you look at the total student enrollment based off of our suspensions, our total suspensions, you have 13 Hispanic students, 9 white students, 7 black students, 4 again, and those percentages are 2 for Hispanic, 1% white, 7.6% black, 7.6% in the other category. So I think we did a really good job with our overall suspension numbers this year. Looking back at some of the data from previous years, we've been around, in 18-19, we had a pretty large number, around 55 for second semester. 17-18 was a really good year. We had 25. So it definitely is an ebb and flow type thing when it comes to suspensions. I'd rather not look at suspensions per se and look at more of a proactive, what are we doing on the proactive side of things, and how are we attacking interventions and restorative measures with students, so we don't really have to report out on, here's how many kids had suspensions. I really want to report out going forward about the great things that we're doing, and we already have been, and Kara will talk to you about that in a minute, about all the great things that we're doing to get ahead of some of those suspensions. So
I'll throw you off if I interrupt.
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for the number breakdown in that format. I appreciated it greatly.
Appreciate that. And it's good for us to review that on a frequent basis as well with our team. And so if you look at the suspension offenses per month, I'm happy to say that our drug possession, smoke, THC is down in previous years. And again, going back to the 18-19 year, I give 19 and 20 kind of a pass, but those were around, like, I think we had close to 20 students that were suspended with either drug possession or smoking or vaping. And so the number fell at 6 total offenses for total students, which is great. Our fights are pretty similar to where we've been at previously. March was a heavy month, 7 instances there. You have to look at the total offenses and total students. So we divide that by 2. Really, we had about 6 fights second semester when you look at the total students that were suspended. Spring break, anytime you have a break, that week leading up to it is very stressful for students, whether it's spring break or Thanksgiving. We always see escalated behaviors there, and so we're working to come up with some creative ideas on how we can solve that going forward, and we'll talk about that again as well in the future. Disrupting our learning environments, we had oral harassment, bullying, 5 total offenses for students there, 1 repeat offender. Theft, we had 5, again, total students, 5 offenses, and most of the theft that we see is occurring in after school hours where students leave their bags hanging out, whether it be in the locker room or down in the basement, with their materials not secured. And so, talking with our students through grade level assemblies, one of the first things that we do is talk to our freshmen here in orientation in a couple of weeks. Is we have huge signs that we say on a big slide, lock up your belongings. This includes your bikes when you come here, and make sure that you have what you need and that no one else can have access to that. Inappropriate, non-compliant behavior was pretty good. Not to say we did not have inappropriate, non-compliant behavior. I would tell you our staff did a phenomenal job this year enduring a lot of classroom disruptions, a lot of classroom behaviors, and that stems from a gap year where students are reacclimating themselves back into the school year and learning how to be students inside a classroom. And I can't tell you the amount of conversations I had with staff about the things that they were doing. So hats off to our staff for really doing a great job. And I know we have some things planned here in the future, especially in the next couple of weeks, about cell phone usage. And coming up with a consistent plan for us, and we'll be rolling that out in a collaborative format with our staff this summer to come up with a plan that will be on the first page of the handbook as students get it during residency here in a couple of weeks. So that's in the works, and I know that is a hot topic and an item where we had students that were connected within the last 2 years, very connected, and now how do we go about using that connectivity towards productivity in a classroom or not, or if teachers are really no-go, how do we come up with a great solution at both ends? And so I'm looking forward to those conversations. And then finally, again, 33 suspensions total for this semester and 30 total students. Before we get into practices and initiatives, do we have any questions on that?
I just appreciated the numbers and wanted to, have us continue to keep an eye on how that breaks down proportionally. I hope that discussion is continued, and so other than that, I appreciated seeing it that way, and hopefully it starts to work to a better, I think the proactive approach is ideal, and the implementation plans for next year, practices for next year looked proactive as well, so that was it.
And I think you've made great adjustments coming back from being out of the building for a good year to coming back into the building. Just really tremendous, even with getting people engaged and participating in stuff.
Yeah, and that's where I think our deans did a nice job of really a team effort. And I go back to the classroom efforts that our teachers did, and it's not perfect. It wasn't perfect, but there's a lot to grow from. We're never going to come across a reacclimation through a pandemic and trying to re-engage students again. Hopefully not, right? But I can, if Carrie, you want to give your report here in regards to what we're doing going forward, it'd be great.
Yeah, speaking to some of those restorative measures, and just again, hats off to our staff. Our staff is willing to participate in those restorative conversations with students after a disruptive incident, which is really great because we can sit down in our office or in their classroom and say, here was the issue, here's why it was a problem, how can we make sure that, teacher and student are good going forward and this isn't going to be an issue. So we really appreciate when our staff are willing to participate in that, and it makes the whole process, smooth. But we continued a lot of the work that we were doing from first semester as COVID kind of trickled off. We were able to really hit attendance, as hard as we could. And so maybe you've been on the receiving end of an attendance call or email from us, or your child has, gotten our letters. But
It's only going to be me, I'll be honest. I'm the only one. I'll own that. I'm the only student at the school right now. And yes, I have.
I was going to say, then you would know that, when your student is marked unverified, you do get an email indicating that that student has been marked unverified. We continue that practice in addition to notifying the student the day following the absence. So they get a letter from our office that says, hey, you were marked unverified, not sure if this was a mistake, come on down, stop down, have a conversation with us. The follow-up with that is usually we get our street flyers who come on down and say, oh, my teacher made a mistake, I'm so sorry. The rest of that is following up with the students who are not so honest and maybe did not make it to class that day. And so we work to make relationships with those kids and their families to have those conversations. Sometimes we'll bring the family in, to talk about what the issue is with getting to class. But we hit attendance really hard, and our effort really was just to keep kids in the building as much as possible. We wanted people to stay home if they had symptoms, but if they were good to go, we wanted them here. We continue to use Hero as well to track tardies and to communicate those tardies home as well. I know that we got a lot of parent feedback from that communication, and we're looking forward to continuing that for next year. We initiated our relationship with ALOP, which is a program through our partnership with West 40. And how that works is there are two assigned ALOP mentors to our building who take on a caseload of about 40 students. That caseload is determined through our small teams meeting with the counseling staff. Some qualifications for a student to be assigned to a mentor might be attendance, might be grades. It's really an effort just to give struggling students a helping hand. Those ALAP mentors will reach out to families and parents as well. And we really had a lot of success with that this year. We saw a lot of students raise their grades up, start coming to school. Our ALAP representatives were great too, and so hats off to them. Sam and Daralisha, we were really lucky to have them this year. We continue to kind of work on some of those restorative practices, and I know that we'll continue to work on those next year with our equity work. But a lot of what we're doing is just the relationship work with kids. Students who struggle to kind of regulate the emotions, might have the outbursts in class. With the help of our security team, we're able to give those students breaks when they need them. We're able to communicate home before an issue turns into something that might lead to an out-of-building suspension. We're finding that because kids have COVID brain, where it was a short-term focus, and they do, a lot of students need, the 5-minute walk around, or they need just a conversation about something that's not algebra for 5 minutes. those restorative measures were really proactive in helping us avoid, escalating situations. And then just turning to the security component, given what's happened in the country in the past couple of weeks, we do have a summer security schedule going. We do have the Security Welcome Center staff from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. With continued surveillance of the cameras down there, as well as surveillance of the doors throughout the building. It's really helpful just to have a smiling face in the Welcome Center and somebody to catch on to things that are happening. I know last night Rich Pulpus was really helpful when the weather turned and getting kids into the building, into a safe place. Communicating with Dave Mannon about making sure that everybody was where they needed to be for that. So next year, as we kind of move into another regular school year, we will have a surveillance station included in our rotation. So down in the security office, there will be cameras if they haven't, TV screens if they haven't already been posted. Big TV screens where a member of our security team will watch cameras. Watch for anything like open doors or students wandering the hallways or more nefarious things than that. But it is just a post to keep kind of an extra set of eyes in the building throughout the day. So we're looking forward to that.
And I'll just, to wrap this up, the deans have really had, Alberto and Kara have had a vested interest in our kids. And so whether it's our monitoring, Go Guardian, or Bark, or all of those platforms, on the mental health side, it's critical that we intervene right away when we get those alerts. And so yesterday morning I was talking to Dr. Freitas about one that we received as well. So it's an ongoing thing, and even though they're off for the summer now, you can see their dedication and what they do for our students here at RB. And then finally, in the attendance component too, next year, we have a summary meeting with our staff. We said, what are 3 things that we can do next year, not pie in the sky, that we can implement right away? And so there's going to be an attendance webpage that parents are going to be able to actually log in their students' attendance instead of calling and leaving a message. So if you're remote, you got the app on your Skyward app on your phone. Johnny's going to be sick today. You log in through your credentials through Skyward. It makes it so
That's
much
huge.
easier and
That's a big
seamless.
improvement.
So that's just a no-brainer. There's a lot of other things that we're going to do through the health office. There's surveillance. We bolstered our cameras through Riverside Township's grant. Thank you for that. And some other things as well. So, and then really paying attention to the equity piece and the mental health side of things as well through Beth's office. So,
Good job, guys. Are there any questions for Kara and David? Thank you. Good job.
Thank you,
David,
guys.
you guys
Thank
start with
you.
Brendan, correct?
yes.
Yep. And now I'd like to introduce Brendan Curtin, our Assistant Principal of Athletics, who will present along with Dave the Spring Athletic and Activities Report. Thank you, Dr.
All right, I'll start here. So this is the end of the year report that gives you just kind of a brief overview of numbers. We're going to give you a more in-depth one as we give the goal report out here next fall. So this is just kind of where we ended up with some initial numbers, and then we'll get into more detail here in the fall as well. But the engagement side of things in regards to activity and athletic participation for the entire school year fell to around 65%. For the end of this year, and this is an entire year percentage. And if you look at where we've been starting in 2016, anywhere from 63, we had a really great involvement right previous to COVID there, 72%, and then now we're around 65% for the end of this year. Combined extracurricular participation, that's looking at any student that was involved in an activity and a sport. You can look at the class breakdown there. Our freshmen coming back from, again, a pandemic. I would say freshman and sophomore, to be honest with you, because this is their first year as well, some of them in our cider building. To have 68% involvement is fantastic. So hats off to both of those classes for really getting engaged, and our sponsors for providing a myriad of activities for them to get involved in here at RB as well. Juniors, we need to work on them next year. Seniors, that's kind of how it goes in regards to cut sports, and Brendan can get into that anyway as well. But you start off freshman year, you have a million kids out for such and such activity or sport, and then kind of narrows itself in as they get to the varsity level. But that's why then we kick it up with other activities and things like that. And so it's more of just making sure that students are aware of what we can offer. Total sport only participation. So a student that, let's take away the activities, just look at kids that are involved in athletics, 829 students. Total activity, so just kids that weren't involved in a sport, just did an activity solely, is 244. And then the number that I really look at the end of the year, and something that we'll follow up with. These are 576 students that we're going to connect with at the start of the school year, that are returning, that we're going to mention, hey, what's going on? How can we help you? How can we get you involved? What are areas that you're interested in? This year we did this a huge survey, and we got a great response from our students on that. And from there, we were able to send that off to our sponsors, who were able to get in touch with those students in their interest areas and get them involved in our programming. So that was great. In regards to new activities, from my side, from the Activity House Biking Club, they ended up having a couple events, I would say, at the end of the school year, where they took the paths that are close to the school here and went out on like a 20-mile ride or 10-mile ride. And, that was great. Esports, kind of oversaw that this year. That was interesting. It's the first year that the IHSA took that on. They had a sectional over at LT. We had 3 students that actually competed at the state level, which was great, and then we're going to look to increase that. I know that's going to be something that's going to explode here, so we're looking forward to it.
Comments on that?
What's that?
Are we looking for comments on that?
There's a lot of college scholarships.
I know. I'm friends with the guy who does it at Oak Park, so I get that it's not a thing.
And then Kara, we assigned her to oversee the fashion club, and so she had a really, really good time with that, and some great involvement with students, over 20 students involved, and that happened literally within the last month or so of the school year. So always looking for more opportunities for students, and we'll work with them here going forward. You want to go over to your side?
Sure. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Just to touch on some of the participation numbers for spring sports. Spring sports saw a similar turnout of participants this last year as compared to our last traditional season. The sports that experienced a considerable increase in participation were boys lacrosse and girls track and field. And it should be noted that the total number of student athletes on all of our athletic teams throughout the school year was the highest we've experienced. So Dave referenced 829 student athletes that equaled 1,174 roster spots. So that's our high water mark, if you will, for the last 6 years. So that's encouraging, certainly trending in the right direction.
Maybe helpful in the future to see that as a percentage, I wonder, because I know we're at a pretty strong population right now.
I think we set that mark by maybe 20 student athletes compared to like
Okay, so it's not, it's not really bending the curve.
significant. 1174, I think the most recent one was 1150 something in 2017, 2018.
Okay, interesting, thanks.
Then in regards to just engagement for next year, it's great. Brennan and I communicate on a regular basis, and we do kind of similar things in a sense. And some of the things that we started this year was a student leadership forum, him on the athletic side, mine on the activity side, bringing our activity leaders together from all different areas and reviewing what can we do better, what do we have in place that's working really well, and then just hearing out their ideas. And so we'll continue that going forward, providing leadership opportunities for our students. Increasing our social media presence. Dr. Freitas does a great job with that. I love that all of our social media accounts are kind of linked together, and so then it's our job to get out to our sponsors and have them post in their individual areas, but then tag our RBHS Instagram account or Twitter account so that we can post all the great things that they're doing. On the activity side, we do a great job with athletics too. We need to be more present, I think, on the activity end of things as well. And then again, holding a meeting with those 500 kids at the start of the school year, and then something that when I talk about like 3 things I want to do that's something that we can roll out and do right away next year is develop kind of like a monthly newsletter and highlight accomplishments from our activity areas, and that's something you'll see going forward here.
Thank you, Dave. In the spirit of time, I'll try to keep the spring season summary relatively short. It was an outstanding spring athletic season. We had a couple of student athletes, which we recognized earlier tonight, compete at the IHSA state finals for their respective sport. A quick recap on our spring sports. The softball team earned a Class 4A regional title this past season. It's my understanding this is the first for RBHS in this particular IHSA enrollment classification. The baseball team, as mentioned earlier, set a record for victories by reaching 30 wins. The team also won a Class 4A regional championship, which was also a first for RB at this classification. RB earned 3 Metro Suburban Conference championships this past spring, with girls soccer, baseball, and boys track and field winning conference titles. I'd like to give a special shout out to Coach Dave Weissar. Boys head How many consecutive titles now?
Well, this is 2 in a row, but we had 6 before.
6 out of the last 7 at least. Outstanding job, Coach.
Good job, Coach. Thank you for coming tonight.
The badminton team posted 15 victories on the season. Both boys and girls lacrosse programs came up just short of securing their first postseason victory and returned many talented players next season. While the boys tennis program produced 7 all-academic athletes, girls track and field continues to progress with a first place finish at the Lamont High School Invitational and a third place finish at the Bulldog Relays. Boys volleyball finished 3rd in our competitive conference and also returned many talented players next season. Nearly the entire roster of the girls water polo team earned all academic honors, while the boys water polo team won the Bulldog Invitational Championship this past spring. It was a successful spring season. However, we certainly had our share of adversity this past season. The challenging landscape increased in terms of transportation as our country continues to experience a bus driver shortage. The IHSA also continues to experience a shortage of officials, umpires, and referees as well. I'm proud of our student athletes and coaches, the way they persevered through these challenging obstacles. It was inspiring with everything that they had to overcome, if you will, just to prepare for a daily competition. It was a fulfilling season for all of our athletic programs, and we wish to say thank you to all our coaches, student athletes, parents, booster club, event workers for all they do for RB Athletics. I'd also like to give a special thanks to our athletic trainer, Bill Fry, for going above and beyond this past season. Lastly, we'd like to give special thanks to members of the athletic team, Administrative Assistant Donna Sifferman, Assistant Athletic Directors Sandy Chaika, Mark Ori, and Sam Steiler. This concludes the spring sport report. Are there any questions?
I would have one question, and you may not be prepared to talk about this now, but in reference to conference placement for the upcoming year, I think I'd like to learn about that when the time is right to learn about
Sure,
where
I
we're
can
going to
share a
end
little
up.
bit with you right now. This upcoming school year, the 22-23 school year, will be the last, how should I put it, mixed year with publics and privates within the Metro Suburban Conference. A handful of the private schools are either moving off to the Chicago Catholic Conference or they are forming a new Chicago Christian Conference. So the 4 remaining public schools will stay in the Metro Suburban. This is, again, everything remains the same next school year. This would go into effect 23-24.
Thank you.
So that's where we're at.
We're still exploring, still requesting. No acceptors at this point, but we're still requesting.
I think some of us get questions, so it's good to get a regular update on that one.
Sure.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Weissar. Thank you, Kara.
Thank you.
It just leaves you, Bob. You ready for your report?
He's working on it
Right now. All right.
Consent agenda, action item.
Motion.
Gotcha. The Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois takes the following action on the listed consent agenda items. Approves minutes from the meetings held on May 10th, May 24th, May 27th, 2022, open and closed, as presented in the June 14th, 2022 Board Agenda Packet.
Was there also an additional meeting, Ms. Towner?
Would I have it?
May 27th is the
It's in
graduation.
there.
Special committee of the whole meeting, May 27th?
It says minutes held May 10th, May 24th, May 27th, 2022.
Oh, I didn't hear you say 27th.
Oh,
I didn't
sorry.
hear that part of it.
I
That's what
did
was
say it,
asking.
open and closed as presented.
Okay,
Second.
I apologize. Thank you.
Second by
that's
Ms.
okay.
Gasko.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Moving on to old business action items.
Old business action, life safety, capital improvements. Dr. Smetana provided that update during the facility advisory. We're also looking at Amendment 22, would be possible the third amendment in regards to the air conditioning unit over the library and cafeteria. So we're exploring that with our architect as well as what we have remaining in regards to our debt service limit. So more updates will be coming to the board on that. That is something you may need to approve this summer so that we can get that ball rolling and have enough time to get it in before next summer. We're going to make sure we can live through the rest of this year, but it is a large unit for a large amount of space. So I don't think it's wise to hold off until the next life safety. So,
Which is 2024.
well, yeah, correct. You would do the walk in like 23 and not start till 24, so we'd almost have to try to limp it through for 2 more years. It's not ideal. Tentative budget?
Included in the board packet tonight is a second draft of the tentative budget for fiscal year '23. As we've previously mentioned, we met with Finance Advisory Council this week to review the budget. Actuals for revenue and expenditure were reported as of May 31st. And before the July meeting, we'll of course update it with June 30th actuals. We are asking that the tentative budget be approved tonight for public review, as Dr. Skinkis stated. So once it gets approved tonight, we'll post it on our website. But that doesn't mean it's finalized. We'll be continuously reviewing the budget and presenting it to the board again in July and August before adopting the formal budget in September. There is a small surplus right now projected due to the decrease in special education costs and unexpected revenue from grants such as Airmark grant, the new ARP IDEA grant. This is like a sub grant of ESSER 3 that recently came out, along with a refund from the district's past liability insurance cooperative.
And I had sort of a question or a point to make, but I just thought of it right now, so I'm sorry. The evidence-based funding is budgeted right now at the same level as it has been, even though the state said they're going to give us more money, correct?
Yes, because they typically don't tell you how much more money they're going to give you until usually August. And so until they release that amount and until it's approved at the state level, we don't
So
incorporate
it
it into our
may,
budget.
it may become more clear when we do the final.
Correct.
Correct.
I think a lot of
A
things.
lot
Or
of things
may
become
not.
more, a lot of things often become
I
more
appreciate your
clear.
optimism there.
I know, right? Well, it's the state of Illinois.
More things
so-
become clear in September,
Gotcha.
but we need to function for 2 months.
Sure,
That's why we
sure,
need to
sure,
approve
sure.
it tonight. I don't think there were any other questions submitted on the
There were
tentative
not.
budget.
Any questions here tonight? So we want to go ahead and make
Okay.
a motion to move.
The Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the tentative budget for FY23 as presented in the June 14th, 2022 Board Agenda Packet.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Second, Bill Durkin.
And we could use a roll call, please.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Ms. Horst?
Yes.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Gasko?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
He's not on.
He is
Paul.
not on.
Okay.
Yes. Pardon me. Moving on to the IGA with West 40.
You know, we do several services with West 40. That's our intermediate service center. It used to be called Regional Offices of Education, but the West 40 Regional Safe Schools Program. That's if we have to expel a student or do an alternative setting for a student. We have the High Needs ALOP program, which is what we brought in in our return to COVID, so that we have 2 interventionists from West 40 that work with our high-risk students or students that are having academic or behavioral or attendance issues. We also have the Alternative Learning Opportunity Program and Senior Plus So these are all the services that are provided by West 40. The costs are below the IGA, just is more or less agreeing that if we use these services, what the cost will be paying for next school year.
And this is a second read, correct?
Yes.
Ready? Does anyone have any questions? I'll let you go and make the motion if you
Okay.
want first.
The Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois approves the intergovernmental agreement FY23 between West 40 and School District 208 for the purpose of placing students in the West 40 Regional Safe Schools Program and/or High Needs Alternative Learning Opportunities Program with the tuition of $115 per day as presented in the June 14th, 2022 Board Agenda Packet.
We have a second, please.
Second.
Second, Bill Durkin.
Any more comments or questions? I think that was we addressed them last time, so we can get a roll call, please.
Mrs. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Redhorn?
Yes.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Gasko?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
And Ms. Lee?
Yes. And our final item under old business, Dr. Skinkis.
Press Plus, so the press policy group met the first week of June. We spent a lot of time on this. Highlighted in the background sheet are the policies with some minor additional edits. We also wanted to make sure we were making all of our policies inclusive and under the diversity, equity, inclusion goal, which I think we are doing a good job. We also have a larger policy that says we will, all of our policies and procedures will strive for more diversity, equity, and inclusion. 7:190, I believe, was one that was not part of the packet, but needed to be additionally amended for special education purposes. I believe that's our restraint policy under some new legislation. So those are the policies, and I did not receive any additional questions on those.
Any
Okay.
comments here?
The Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois approves the Press Plus Policy Issue 109 as presented in the June 14th, 2022 Board Agenda Packet.
Second.
Second by Ms. Gaska. This is an all in favor.
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, moving on to new business, payment of bills.
There were no questions submitted in regards to payment of bills for tonight.
Can you do the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. The Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois approves the payment of bills as presented in the June 14th, 2022 Board Agenda Packet.
We have a second?
Second.
Ms. Gaska, second.
And we do need a roll call for this, please.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Gasko?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Redhorn?
Yes.
And Ms. Lee?
Yes. Moving on to district goals. Dr. Skinkis, can you remind us how long these were posted on our website for and distributed to the stakeholders?
Close to 4 weeks. They were posted on the website. Also, Mary Ann updated that list of stakeholders for ones that participated pre-pandemic in the mission statement. So we sent them the updated goals as well. We did not receive any feedback, and so I think with the amount of time the board has put in and review from the board, I think we're prepared to adopt the Board of Education goals as well as the SMART goals for the 22-23 school year.
This was a lot of work, it was a lot of effort. Are we okay moving forward? Looking to my right, looking to my left? Can you do a
Yes.
motion, please? Ms.
All
Towner?
right, I'm so excited. This is big. The Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois approves the district goals as presented in the June 14th, 2022 Board Agenda Packet.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Okay, is this an all in favor? All in favor, all in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, moving on. Thank you all for all of your work on this. There was a considerable amount of back and forth.
Yes, and the past board that
Yes.
started it. Good work.
Final calendar, just as a formality, Board of Education that we do every year, just to say that the school year is completed, no emergency days were used. So you kind of have to submit the calendar in January when the board takes action, then you commit it at the end of this actual school year. Submit, not commit, submit.
Okay, the Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois approves the final 2021-2022 school calendar with the emergency days of May 26th, May 27th, May 31st, and June 1st eliminated to be submitted to the Illinois State Board of Education as presented in the June 14th, 2022 board agenda packet.
Second. Second from Ms. Gaska. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Moving on to the facility rental agreement.
Facility rental, the facilities, as I stated, facilities rent met on June 13th. We usually approve the facility rental agreement for the upcoming school year every June so that the changes can take effect for any rentals starting July 1. The only change this year was breaking out the field house rental charges so that if someone is using all 3 courts, they're basically renting the field house per court. It would also allow us the opportunity to possibly have 2 renters in the field house at one time. Other than that, no other changes. And no other questions were submitted.
Any questions here tonight? Seeing none?
No. The Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the facilities use agreement as presented in the June 14th, 2022 board agenda packet.
Second. Thank you. Second from Ms. Gaska. We need a roll call on this one, please.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Bernhardt?
Yes.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Gasko?
Yes.
And Ms. Davis?
Yes. First read on the athletic trainer agreement.
We're working with ATI. Dr. Smetana has been taking the lead with this. We're currently trying to work through some final terms on indemnification, but we wanted to get this in front of the board so that if we can finalize those terms with legal counsel and bring in this for action in July, we want to be ready to move on this before we start this fall athletic season. Am I missing anything else at this time?
No, that is it.
And no questions were submitted, so this is just a first read and pending legal review and some additional language.
Okay, so we will address this. Do you want this approved tonight, or do you want to move this to July?
I would say we can wait. I mean, the other way of approving it would be pending final legal review and agreement, but I think because we're still trying to hammer out some terms, it's
Okay.
okay to do July. We have coverage for the summer, correct? Okay.
Okay, so July it is. Educational tour, music department.
This educational tour Dr. Freitas submitted for tonight, it is a first read, but the sooner the board can consider to take action on this, the sooner this group can fundraise. I believe the music department is looking to go to Walt Disney World around Martin Luther King weekend. Any other information on that, Dr. Freitas?
No, that's correct. Like I said, the sponsor and the students are looking to fundraise as soon as possible. I completely understand the process, the first reading, final approval, but if you guys consider to be approved tonight, that would really help kind of jumpstart that fundraising. But all the permissions are there, you know, our music sponsors, they're on top of it, you know. They're excited to represent RB on a national level, you know, once again, as they did the year before. So I'm excited to support the team, and I think we're ready. We're ready to go outstate again, showcase RB, and one of the happiest places in the world, right?
This continues the tradition of every other year of a music.
Correct, it's been
like,
because of the
trend.
pandemic. It's
Right,
been,
right.
And it's a band and chorus, right?
It's band, yes.
Band,
So
yes.
it's combined.
Band.
So it's up to the board.
What's everyone's pleasure?
I'm okay.
I have no
Yeah,
objections.
looks solid.
Mhm.
It ruffles
Yeah.
my feathers that we keep pushing these through.
Right.
But,
Well, this one, I'm not sensing the
This-
urgency on, so I don't know why we wouldn't wait till July to be.
I mean, we could put it in a consent or
Yeah.
just,
Well, the concern is the fundraising. They are trying to do 3 different fundraisers on it, and the sooner they get started, I know they were just practicing last night, so it's not like they're not active and engaged in it. What is your concern? It's the approval first read?
yeah, I mean, they always seem to like rush, the trips always seem to rush in.
Well, this isn't until January. The rush is the fact that they're trying to raise money, but I understand what you're saying. You want to have a second read of it, or
Yeah.
be able to read
Right,
it.
I mean, and they know that we usually take 2 reads, and so I don't and we've been doing that for a decade, so I don't understand why that is so hard.
Well, I think we have board policy that discusses that, right? We talk about a first and
Right.
second read, in particular related to items that are where the district is expending, so we're not expending on this one, so it's kind of in that gray area. I hear Laura's concern. I think we're not hearing that this needs to be adopted tonight necessarily, but.
This one's a little
Yeah.
bigger, because the
Yeah.
last time we took almost 200 students to New York, that was in 2018.
So the only thing I would ask is if there's no questions at this time.
I went on that trip.
If there's no questions at this time, what do we anticipate changing in 4 weeks?
Do have a question.
Okay.
It's a pretty hefty cost. It's up to $2,155 per student. Will there be scholarships available for students who do not raise or who cannot afford to pay the $2,155?
This is an optional field trip. It is not a required field trip. Therefore, it's for students that can.
That could afford it.
Sometimes,
Sorry.
that's why they want us to get approval
That's why they
sooner,
want-
because they want to do
I know.
three different
I get it.
fundraisers.
Students
I
can
get it.
raise the entire trip through the fundraisers.
They can, okay.
Yes, we have had students do that in the past.
Just, I mean, because it's not $500, it's $2,000 something,
yeah.
right? Like,
Right. Well, I think, that was something.
it's a lot of money.
Yeah, we
I
just
would
Goes to
die,
one.
like, I
If you want to
would,
go, you show that you want to go, and
Yeah.
you find ways, and your coaches, teachers, mentors tell you how to properly fundraise. But I understand what your
It's-
concern is.
if my child were to come and say, I want to go to this,
Yep.
and we have to do these 3 fundraisers, and we have to hit up people for, I'd be like, oh Lord, here, just, it's just a lot of work, but I'm in that, I might say, here's the money, go, or I might say, let's do the fundraisers, or I might say, sorry, we don't have that money, I'm unemployed, we can't go, right? So it's a lot of money. And this is where we want to look at it from the equity lens, right? It turns into an optional trip for those who can afford to fundraise. And for those, because fundraising, then you got to have the people, like I have yet to have anyone donate to my kids' football thing. And I'm like, you guys, I got to commit to, I think it's $500 per student, right? Or the goal.
Not required.
I know that, but then I have this overachiever who's like, Mom, you haven't sent it out to your contacts. What's going on? So I'm just, again, $500, $2,100, equity lens. Let's just make sure that we don't turn an optional trip into something that's going to be prohibitive to some kids.
Go ahead.
That's all.
Well, I
you had a
was going to
question.
say,
Yeah.
Brian made a point, and I think because he does this with kids or
I spent
have done
5
it
hours
with.
on Saturday washing cars with students.
But I
raising
mean-
money. I know
No,
it needs to fundraise.
I know
But
you
you
have,
have mine.
I know you
There's
have,
130
but you had
students.
said that,
Yeah.
like, your comment was that they're influencers in their life, namely some of the people in the music department, will teach them the tricks of the trade, yes? Likely, right?
Right.
They could also go to the request maybe from the ed fund. They can, the music sponsors sometimes can try to.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest. Are there supplemental sources here?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're
It
not.
is
So,
what- yeah, I mean,
so
this is
my
how it's
suggestion
always been.
is we don't adopt this tonight. Maybe with 100, I guess maybe a question to ask is with 130 students, how many are anticipated not to go? In the past was 130. What percentage of the eligible group?
Yeah, and I want to add another comment too. This trip is a lot more, we went to New York, and this trip is a lot more than when we went to New York. And they were very clever in how they brought the costs down, having to fundraise and, that. And, I paid my way as a chaperone and paid my daughter's way. But they used 2 nights on the bus, because we took the coach buses to get there, and that took up 2 hotel nights. And they found very clever ways. So this cost, again, I guess I'm like, did we look in all the clever cost-saving ways to bring this many kids down there? That would be kind of one thing I would have liked to heard from the sponsor. We used to get the sponsors come in and kind of explain that to us, that this is really what it costs. And then the other comment I'll make, for an equity lens, even though the money is there for people who can afford it, but let's also have equity for all students who might not be able to take this kind of trip on their own. So it was a very special trip for us to go to New York. So in that way, there is also an equity and diversity, because some of these trips would not be available to all the students unless it was through an organization such as a school. So
Okay.
it's kind of a
So I
cool
think
thing
Dr.
too.
Freitas has a couple things to do. He needs to go back and work with the sponsor to make sure that all cost-saving measures have been updated. And some feedback from the sponsor in regards to, what means are going to be helped to help kids fundraise, mentor during the fundraising process, so that we're not, if a kid wants to go, they have a reasonable opportunity to fundraise and pay for the trip.
That seems fair.
Again, it's an educational tour. There are some reasons from the school board responsibility why we call this an educational tour, because it's not a field trip. It's not a required trip that's part of a curriculum. It's like it's no different than, if you wanted to go study abroad in the summer, right? Some of those educational tours that last 2 weeks where you go to Ireland or things like that, so.
But like Laura said, it's also an opportunity for kids who may never get to
Sure,
Disney.
absolutely. I'm feeding off
Right,
of both.
I know, I just.
I'm working the 7 board members here, and I'm telling the principal what he's got to do before
Yes,
July. And
yes.
Okay.
And they'll vote on it in July. Okay? Dr. Freitas, you clear on what you need to do?
No, I'm
Okay.
clear on my steps, yes.
Okay. Thank you both. That concludes new business visitor statements. We don't see anybody new here in the audience that has come in.
David, do you have anything?
I got a text from James at 1700. He told me, please tell him that to look at the number again.
Okay.
That's just what you want me to.
Well, he's
I
not
was
like,
gonna say-
Too, because there was a chance that
It's a rain.
I don't know.
one of
Yeah.
the second
I'm just-
set of flights.
Well, even 1,700 is a lot of money.
I understand.
the way the sheet is
Like,
filled
I
out,
really just
Let
wanna-
James know Hector will be in touch.
because it gives a range. That's on the low end of the range, but let's just kind of tie up some loose ends on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Just the messenger.
Yep. Thank you.
Poor guy, just saying.
Okay.
And we appreciate you staying, or I do.
Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
Yes.
Well,
No
wait,
additional discussion items.
Oh.
Consideration of items for future meetings. Does anyone have any?
Nope.
Looking. Moving on, and we're matters for closed session, including appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, student discipline, individual student matters, purchase, sale, or lease of real property, probable imminent or pending litigation, collective negotiations, school safety, confidentiality of closed session minutes, and superintendent's yearly goals and contract.
All right, the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois enters closed session for the purpose of considering the closed session matters as presented in the June 14th, 2022 Board Agenda Packet.
Can we have a second, please?
Second.
Second, Ms. Gaska.
Thank you, and a roll call to go into closed.
Yes.
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Nicholas?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
With Fred.
Okay, well, we're good. 8:19, we come back.